normalising it is detrimental to students who need support, seeking support. So the approach we would like to take and have kind of been pushing for over the past few years has very much been trying to get the university to acknowledge that students do take drugs and not to villainise them, so that if they do need support, they can go and get support without feeling like they're going to be taken into a disciplinary proceeding, basically. It's quite late in the year to be starting on a campaign like that, but yes, so it'll be one that I recommend you to take up with David next year. Any more? Lovely. I will be quick with the rest of it, Karis, I promise. So the rest of it, LUSU transparency and accessibility. I've left that as amber for that whole year. Does anyone have any further ideas about how we can make LUSU more transparent and accessible? Epic. Lovely. You're doing an excellent job is what I'm hearing there. We're a glass door. If you disagree with that, please, I'm more than happy to have a conversation with you. We can try and improve that. Some general feedback that I've had through some normal conversations is things like the trustee board feels like it's a bit of an ethereal entity that people have very little kind of knowledge or sight of, and that's something that I would like to kind of see improved going forward with LUSU. But I think kind of the little things that we've done, like my weekly updates, filming UA, we are still working on the financial transparency AGM item. Those should do a lot to kind of really open up what LUSU does and how we operate, and kind of give you the toolkit to be able to really influence us properly. And then making colleges live up to the hype. I think this is the last thing I've got. As I said, PVC, student experience in colleges. It's not just anything to do with me. He'll have oversight of things like the sports centre and student wellbeing services as well. And so basically all the officers, apart from the education officer, will have kind of touch points with Andrew, although he will still have control of the library, so maybe the education officer will still have kind of touch points there. The Do You Know Where Your College Membership Fee Goes campaign, I thought went rather well in terms of kind of the engagement it got. I've noticed some meme pages have copied the format, not just USL, but I call that a success. What was less of a success was the university's reaction to it, which the JCR presidents of the room might kind of get some flashbacks to the war on. But it was an excellent testing ground for how the university reacts to the Students' Union being sort of outwardly political in that sort of sense. We very much felt there was a big knee-jerk reaction. We were asked to take things down. We said no, and you'll notice it's all still up. And I think we've really helped to draw a line there as to where our independence is as a students' union compared to the university. We have a legally enshrined right to make legal criticism of the university where we kind of think it's worthwhile. So there's very little the university can do to ask us to take things like this down. And realistically, it's a good example of what the university does when you are political. Do they want to come and talk to you about things? Do they want to say, we're not going to talk to you unless you take it down? Those sorts of things, this was a good testing ground for. And now with the new PVC, student experience role, that is where that question goes, and I'm picking that up with Andrew in the next week or so is my plan. Welcome reps. Sign up to be a welcome rep if you haven't already, please. It's a good way to get people part of your own student community, and it helps out the JCRs as well. And extravs, those are things that if you've been here a long time, you might know what they used to be like. They are happening again this year, but they're not going to be anything like what you used to know. And we are having a meeting with the JCRs tomorrow to kind of lay down what is possible this year. We'd like it to be as grassroots as possible. And we just like people to stay to the end of the year and have a good time to celebrate the end of their exams. That's extras. Any questions for me? Yes, Neil.
So, for Roses,
Yep.
put out a statement about the school tax. This was something that Roses Committee didn't want to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Emily spoke to us about it, and we were consulted, and we had a very long conversation about it. And we probably decided that we didn't want to make a statement. You continued and made a statement. I don't think that's really, one, listening to what students anyone as a representative of students planning roses. So I just kind of like want to understand why you did that and why you ignored students.
So the feedback from Rosa's committee didn't reach me before I put that out, basically. After it went out, it was deemed it should stay up because it's been responded to by the page, and taking it down would have raised more questions. But I think that has raised questions about just how we will communicate as a team and how Rosa's committee, sports committee and all that feed into things. Ultimately, I am accountable to Union Assembly, and you're very much right to raise it here. And yeah, I think it's a big discussion as well, though, about our ethical purchasing practices and kind of what we do put out as merch and where we source things from and single-use plastics. But yeah, I apologise to Rosa's committee that it felt like I went behind Rosa's committee's back because it wasn't the intention. Any more? Lovely.
Speaking for Liz or for Leah?
I think Emily's next.
Which one did you say Liz now? Yeah, while you're up.
I've not got much to say about what Liz has been up to. Liz's work is in the paper pack. She's been on sick for a while. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to kind of answer them privately or direct you to Chu, who's been taking on the operational work of Liz's campaigns. But if there's any questions right now about what Liz has been up to, I'm more than happy to try and answer them. Yep.
Super basic. If anyone has been following this, because it's PGR related and it's fast, there has been some controversy with the Hub, which was the new space we've given. I think talking to Chi, pretty much we're as good as we're going to get with that. Currently no more union involvement. We are talking to the Hub. Things might be changing next year, but so far so good. We've got this. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Essentially, we think that one.
And thank you for all of your help in that as well. Lovely. That's Liz. I don't know, I haven't looked at Leah's papers yet, so if I can hand over to Emily, I can look over Leah's paper.
Thanks for Do you want to stand up? You do sit down.
I'm not standing up.
Do you want me to click as well?
There's only one.
I'll click on stuff.
Hello. There's not really a lot of my updates because the most of the thing that I've been doing for the past 3 months has basically all just been roses. If you didn't know, we won for the 5th time in a row, which is the first ever time we've done that, and we got the highest points ever. There were some other really good standouts, so hit all name. The women's rugby won all 3 of their matches, if that's how I know. So it was the best weekend ever, but it has also been really exhausting, up to the point and afterwards. So I hope you all had a good time because it's nearly killed me. Access fund for next year, I'm going to have a meeting on Monday with the new BBC about this to kind of just iron out some things so we can get it all sorted, but that is pretty much set to go for both sports and societies for next year. And then the other things that I've been doing is prep for next year, so prepping, training and Freshers Fair. And then the other thing is that I was appointed to be Bucks North West Regional Chair, so that means that I'm the student representative for all of the North West for Bucks. So that means that I go to advisory group, which is basically a really boring meeting with a load of old people from Bucks. And we talk about just general things to do with sport and how they're conducting it. We had a really interesting discussion about parasport and the points that are assigned to parasport through Bucks. So that's really interesting because it means that I get to kind of involve myself a lot more in Bucks than just through my role as a sub here. And then the other thing is really just Sports and Society Awards. So we've got Society Awards coming on this Friday, and then Sports Awards on the 5th of June after I come back off holiday. That's really it, because I genuinely have no time for anything else. Any questions? Oh, hello. Any time,
Thank you. I think last Union Assembly we discussed the Sports Access Fund that you managed to get and the accounts that the money for the subsequent years is held in. and I asked about what interest rate that was. Were you able to find that out?
I haven't had any other meetings with the union about it because we've had the new unions in, who hadn't speaking to us changed and also haven't.
Thank you.
The money is held by the university, that's not held by
Not in the students' union.
Yeah.
Anyone have any other questions? Well, I'm standing up for the microphone.
No. Can you press the leaders? Oh yeah. I am now Leah. Okay, I'm literally just going to read what's put on here. So she's obviously been working a lot this year on like mental health services, so currently doing external audit of delivery of wellbeing services, so discussion in gaps in areas to support, town safety, so her report is nearly finished and the intention is this to facilitate this to City Council. I can attest that she's been working very hard on this report, I've seen her doing it for ages. Focus also on need for cultural change, so better education for men and boys, and then tackling period poverty, and the facilities manager has given the project, but still haven't received an update. Encouraging student initiatives, a student campaign on reusable period products to give away 54 cups. Shout out to Sam and Talia. Sam sat over there. Faces on the wall, does that mean faces on the wall, the UA ones?
Yes, that way.
If you have seen across the wall from where our faces are, there's like loads of different tiny frames, so it's the intention that everybody from UA has a photo on there. Keeping campus trans plus inclusive, no change, create accommodation is an ongoing project that has been taken on by the LU Com team. And tackling sexual misconduct, so organising a conversation between the Vice-Chancellor and Virtual Trust to address gaps in support for survivors, and organising a meeting with the new BBC Student Experience and, is it Student Experience Colleges?
Yes.
Yeah, about its training provision. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I don't think I'll be able to answer them.
I saw that one of the points was about, if you could go back to the other slide, what was it? Oh yeah, better education for men and boys. Is that sort of too broad? Because it seems quite just blaming men and boys in general instead of a more targeted approach.
I don't know. I can't answer that because I don't know. This wrote it. I would say that the majority of sexual offences that do occur in town are done by men and boys. So that's probably why she's put that on there. But it's probably something just email me.
Any more questions for the FTOs? We'll move on. Chepic.
You want this microphone back?
Should we just speak to each other in microphones? That's really cool. Okay. Yeah, it's it on. Is back to you, Rory, about sustainability. Officer and Sustainability Committee.
Cool. Does anyone want me to open them on the board, or have you all got the papers up in front of you? Basically, it came to the AGM last year to set up a new Environment and Ethics full-time officer position. Now that vote had a lot of discussion, and that vote, I think, lost out on being passed by about 1 or 2 votes. It was a really small margin, basically because there's obviously one camp saying, you know, it should happen, it needs a designated role, and that people were sort of really passionate about that, and rightfully so. And then another camp was just talking about the general funding of the union and the fact that we don't have the funds to establish a new full-time officer role. And so I believe it didn't pass purely because a lot of people were quite pragmatic about it and kind of saw that there's no money to create a full-time officer role. So we've taken that and thought there is clearly a mandate for some more political steer on sustainability within LUSU, and looking at our own structures, we thought that our liberation and campaigns groups would be best placed to seat an officer with a political mandate to guide LUSU in all things sustainability. Now, we've named it sustainability rather than environment and ethics, purely for the case of keeping it quite broad, certainly at the start, and you'll notice if you do open the role description in the terms of reference, it's all very vague because we quite like it to be shaped by the people who take on those roles. And you know, environment and ethics are quite big things. You could get someone coming into it with a very kind of strong push for more kind of sustainable purchasing practices and kind of green policies, but you could also get a lot more people coming into it with a far more political stance and things like our campaigns on fossil-free careers or plant-based universities and things like that. And this role encompasses all of that, and we'd like to just make it look as welcoming as possible for anyone of any one of those sorts of ilks to come in and shape it how they like. Now, the Sustainability Committee is something we already have essentially set up, but it's currently chaired by an operational member of staff, Scott, who we love, but it means that it can't have kind of a political directive approach.
It's also chaired by me.
And Emily, sorry. And so we'd like to give that to far more student-led size. And here we are. So we've presented this, and we would like basically your approval to set up this role, because it will also create a new role for someone to sit on Union Assembly, which will probably mean we'll need another picture frame on the stairway. So yeah, any questions about these roles before I hand back over to Karis to do a vote?
So would it be voluntary or would there be some financial compensation?
It's voluntary, so it'll be the same as one of our liberation offices. As much as we would love to pay people, that whole discussion goes back to how much money we actually have. But yeah, there's a broader discussion there in terms of kind of what we give back to our student volunteers as a students' union, because I think that you can always do more to give back to student volunteers. You guys put in so much time and effort, and I would like to be able to reward that in some way. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I'm just a bit confused on where this sits between an FTO and a liberation officer. Is it because if it's voluntary? I can't assume it's full time.
Yeah, so I feel like I didn't explain that very well. It is a liberation officer role, so it'll sit under the wellbeing officer's remit over liberation groups. I mean, to full name liberation and campaigns groups, because you might be thinking, is sustainability really liberation? It's more campaigns based, but yes, it sits under that. It's a voluntary role.
Any other questions? None against. My name is Christina.
Yeah, just something to be aware of, especially given the current financial climate of the university, when any role is introduced that's unpaid, potentially is this going to threaten any current paid roles?
It's a good question. As in, do you think, are you asking, would it mean that we would lose a paid role?
Yeah, essentially it's the question always to ask, if something's introduced new unpaid, are there potentially any paid roles that might be at risk because they essentially cover the same ground?
So
it's a genuine open question.
Yes, yeah,
it's not a loaded question.
So the only paid role that we have that has a sustainability remit is Scott, who's our Lusu Green coordinator, and we have no plans to get rid of Scott. I can say that for the record. You're welcome, Scott.
Any other questions? No? Oh,
this is kind of a question for this, but also the system that the Liberations kind of campaigns operate on, and especially their elections. Obviously, we've just had the Women's Plus elections, and there's only one candidate in that. How, as an officer team, or like, is there, how are you going to support the uptake in people applying to these roles and making sure that an election is representative?
Yeah, I mean, on the Women's Plus election, I'm not sure if we've advertised the voting numbers or anything like that. Last year, the Women's Plus election had 5 people vote for it, something like that. Frank can probably tell me the exact numbers. Whereas this year we had 130 people participate in the voting. So while we only had one candidate stand, We had more apply and some dropped out due to the time of the year, I think, exam season and all that. It saw a lot more engagement, and I think that it's something that liberation groups as a whole are kind of going through a bit of a phase of everyone's still kind of working themselves out and seeing what works best for their groups. I don't want to talk too much on liberation. Again, they're Leah's remit more than mine, and we have liberation officers in the room that I don't want to say something they're going to disagree with too much. In terms of kind of on the other side, there is a big question on how well we as LUSU support our liberation groups, and that's something that I think we need to do better on as well. You look at, I think it's not controversial to say that we are understaffed in LUSU at the moment. We do not have enough staff realistically to do everything that we need to do or want to do. You know, JCRs used to have a specific JCR person, that role no longer exists. Our communities team is stretched, our sports team is stretched. That doesn't necessarily mean that we shouldn't create the voluntary roles and try to support them as best they can. But the more noise that people make saying that we need this, I think is better, because it goes up to the top and it can direct actually the shape of the company and kind of what roles we recruit for in the future. All of that then pins on the block grant we get each year from the university, and then it's trying to make a case to the university that we have value in what we do and we need the right resourcing from the university to staff what we do properly. It's a bit of a rambling answer to your question, but does it help?
I don't think you have answers.
Okay.
To that question really. I think it's more about getting people into a position where they are wanting to run these roles, and that is something that can happen, I think, even without loads of money behind it. It's something that can obviously from the staff that you have.
Yeah, I mean, big on that. All of our liberation groups specifically kind of rely on having a community around them of people who are interested in what they're doing to then run for the various exec roles that they all have. Which is why for this role we've tried to keep it as broad and open as possible, so that in its first sort of iteration it is as appealing to kind of anyone who likes the look of the kind of the title. It will need a push. It will need kind of an establishment. As I say, we already have the sustainability committee, so we do have a pool there for someone to potentially step up to take on that officer position in the first year. And then, just as any of our sort of societies, you kind of rely on them to do a lot of the work to help to grow, to create a bigger pool of people to fill those exec positions. Is that more what you were asking? I still feel like I'm not answering it very well. Okay.
Any more questions? Aurora,
Yeah.
Ah.
Okay. I don't think we need to do cards, do we? Because we've only got 2 people at the back that can't vote. Yeah. Got one. Okay, so we are voting on whether we establish this sustainability role as an LCO. Okay, hands. We'll do a hand. Anyone want to vote in private? Cool. So, hands up for. You've also got against and abstain as well, just so you know your options. Anyone for against? And anyone that wants to abstain?
There's one.
Is that a Sam?
Yeah, that's it.
Does Sam want to abstain? Okay. Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rory. Okay, we'll go on to the 4th item and then we'll have a break afterwards. I cannot find the agenda. I believe it's Live with AI.
Hello. I just want to preface, I am so caffeinated right now, so if I do say anything incriminating, please don't come for me. I'm Olivia, I am the FST rep. If you recognise me from elsewhere, no you don't. This is a paper that I've written, basically, about AI in undergraduate degrees. If you've not read it, don't worry, I have like a TLDR. Basically, speaking to students, they don't like AI, they don't like how the university's handling it, they don't really like the regulations around it and how their peers are using it sometimes in group projects. So I did do like a very little survey in the faculty forum that we have, I think it's like twice a term, and there was only 33 people, so it's not that representative. Well, to be fair, only 3 of them were actually happy with the university's stance of AI. 25 didn't actually believe that the university is managing it well, and 12 confided that they feel like there's a lack of training or like feeling uninformed. And then there's just some quotes on the left, but basically, especially you might notice, kind of hard not to, with Google, if you Google something, AI comes up. If you're on red, amber, green, it's kind of hard to ignore it. So that's kind of the things that I wanted to address with this. So why did I write this paper? Basically, students worry about their peers, especially in group projects. People find if they say that group members have used AI, it's not really handled in the same way as like if they've taken something directly from like Google or a paper or something like that without citing it. And yeah, there is a potential if people are educated that there will be a decrease in AI misuse, not necessarily, but there is a potential. And basically, this paper, by the way, I should preface, if you've not read it, it's about a workshop for first years on AI. And it's not against AI, it's more so how to use it in good practice. And I think that's pretty beneficial for students in this kind of age. I won't go into too much detail about what the workshop is. Well, basically, it will get students to use generative AI. It would be nice to do it through SAIL, the university's AI thing, so it's not stealing your data. And basically get students to assess multiple different factors, including environmental impact, ethics, validity, and quality. And then there'll be like an end assessment. This would be something that'll be like an hour long at the start of first year. I would recommend it to be university-wide. However, obviously, I mean, I'm an engineer, so I don't know really how anything else works in the university apart from like FST really. And this would, first year, it would be in the kind of format that departments would see fit. Wouldn't want it to be too long, wouldn't want it to just be somebody droning on, have it very like interactive, people sitting in front of a computer so they're actually engaging. And I think one of the biggest questions is, what do you do if people don't turn up? Because it's so easy to just not turn up to things. I can't say because I'm a student and not staff, but it'd be pretty much something that I'd ask staff about. The suggestion that I would make is that students basically have to attend it and have a good reason not to if they're not there. And it would potentially prevent them from actually submitting coursework in their first year, because this is a pretty big thing now. There is a lot of AI malpractice cases in certain departments, especially in some meetings that I've had with staff, and they are struggling, they're very visibly struggling with malpractice cases. But yeah, that's kind of like a TLDR. Why have I brought this? Yeah, basically this is for discussion, not for approval, because I want feedback. This is right at the start of me kind of looking if this kind of thing is worth it for me to ask more people for feedback, take it to staff, actually see if it's worth going through. And also I've got, I think, like 6 weeks left of uni, so this might not be something that I actually put through. But I just kind of want to know opinions, because if this wouldn't work, would something else work? And also, is this worth me fighting for, basically? So I'm very happy to like take feedback or like, answer any questions if there is any. Sweet. Okay.
So I'm doing cybersecurity. I'm in my second year, we had an SEC 200 module this year, in which we were told that we were required to use GitHub Copilot as part of our coursework. We had to use it to develop a piece of software. We were barely taught how to use it, and what we were taught just wasn't useful. Also, the AI service changed their policies midway through the coursework. Right at the point where we were trying to code a bunch because, well, we procrastinated because, of course, we had with university students. Would we not have the same issues of the AI services could change midway through, the departments could just not teach it well, and other related issues?
Absolutely. I think that is one of the big problems that you get when you're running any kind of workshop, is that you'll have people that are disengaged, things like that. And with AI changing all the time, that's also a problem. I think the way to mitigate that is to use, like I said before, like the SAIL with the university. I don't know how often they update it, but I believe they have like a fixed version of like ChatGPT or something like that. That'll be my presumption, but this isn't something that I've directly looked into, to be fair. With people teaching it awfully, I would suggest with a workshop kind of thing that it's kind of independent work in a group space, if that makes sense. So it's like a set task. For example, with engineering, I think I suggested first years getting them to code something really difficult, to get some code to do something really stupid, and getting them to write down all this like assessment, and then getting them to turn their computers off, and then actually writing down what they think the code actually does, to show them that you can't just rely on AI, things like that, if that would make sense.
Yes, that is similar to what they attempted to do with SEC 200 this year.
I'd be very interested to actually see what they were aiming to do with that. If you could give me the results on that, that'd be great. Just because, yeah, I don't actually know if it's going to go forward or not. So if somebody's done something similar, that'd be really good to see. Thank you.
Any other questions, feedback, comments?
Yeah, I was really sort of glad to see this coming up because I have a lot of issues with how AI is used in my course, and I know that other people do as well. But something that, so the big issue for me and a lot of people I've talked to is that we're made to use AI, and particularly for like art students, they find that really, like, they're just very much not okay with that because, yeah, they feel like AI is potentially threatening their work, and therefore the fact that they have to use it and have to use something that's against their sort of morals, it just makes them really uncomfortable. And that, I think that's something that needs to be looked at from the university, but isn't covered by your paper. And I also worry that you said that it's not, the idea isn't to discourage AI. It sort of suggests that you're trying to encourage, that this workshop would encourage AI use by saying this is how you use it properly, therefore we're giving you a mandate. At the university is saying to students, like, this is how you use it properly, we're encouraging you to use it. And I know a lot of other students are uncomfortable with the fact that the university is encouraging us to use AI. So that's, yeah, something that I worry about.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, so personally, I don't really like using AI in my work. As an engineer, it can be difficult, especially with it being pushed. I would very happily, in my paper, kind of make it a bit clearer that this isn't anti or for AI, if that makes sense. I do think one thing that I was thinking of addressing with this kind of thing is that, like, the RAG and everything and the way that AI has been pushed with the university, one, is unsustainable, and two, is so like disambiguous and free. It, like some lecturers do say, oh, it's the future, you need to use it for this. And I think that's wrong. You shouldn't have to do it. This might be a bit bigger than what I can do, and this is a very small part of it. But if you think it would fit in with my paper, I'd be very happy to kind of look into it and get some more feedback on that kind of side of it, as well as like the RAG and the way that lecturers are actually looking at AI, not just the way that students are using AI, if that makes sense. Do you think that'd be beneficial?
Yeah, just so things can get
Yeah, I think in the workshop it's important to to sort of be clear in what the goals of the workshop are and what the messaging is. So
Yeah,
rather it being
absolutely.
like, this is how you need to use AI, or this is how you should use AI, it sort of needs to be, yeah, a bit more, I'd say like a bit more bigger picture. So looking at whether we should be using AI or not, and if saying like, if you do, this is how you should do it, but you don't have to.
Yeah. I can definitely look into adding that as well. I think there's a lot of, because this is the first like revision of my paper, I think there's a lot of overarching things that I feel that I haven't actually written down, but I know that I mean, and I think that's definitely one of the things that would be good to clarify. So yeah, thank you for pointing that out.
I think it's really good, but I would quite like to know what the feedback from lecturers and staff has been, if you've taken it towards them, even like unofficially kind of spoken to them about it. Because I know from an art department, quite literally an art department, they'd probably be like, well, we don't need to do this because obviously it's unrelevant to like practice, but especially in your subject area, what is the feel from lecturers and staff?
Yeah, so that's fair. The kind of feedback that I'm hoping to get with this, like bringing it to discussions like the UA, is knowing who wouldn't benefit from it and who would benefit from it, and then who to actually kind of build this up with, if that makes sense. So if arts don't feel like they need it, then like fair enough. I've had a few conversations with some lecturers, really weird feedback. Like for example, I had one that said, yeah, it was like, yeah, but what if people can't pay for ChatGPT? I don't know. It's got nothing to do with what I'm suggesting, but it's not really been very productive when speaking to staff, I found. They don't really seem that interested. What I'm kind of hoping to do after speaking more to students, so I have a bit more of a backing that's not just my personal way of seeing things, because obviously I represent a whole cohort of people, is hopefully I can go to staff and say, this is how people feel, this is what they want, please do something about it, instead of me going, oh, I've written a paper, can you read it and let me know how you feel? But yeah, so far, speaking to lecturers, it's not been that productive. I would like to go cross-faculty as well, especially like, because FST is completely different from FHM to FHAS to the management school. And it'd be something that I'd like to work with you guys on a bit more than just kind of talking about it, if that would be beneficial. But yeah.
Yeah, I think the paper is really important, just from an FST perspective, not just for UGs but for PGs as well. I'm not paper not being for or against use of AI, but more for the information around AI and more for the dangers of it. So, like, one example of the PG space is not many researchers know when and when they can't use it. And for example, if you're an industrial sponsored PG student, you shouldn't use AI because it's an open database. If you put any of your research in that database, then you might lose your intellectual property on that. So it doesn't become yours. It's now owned by the database itself. So I think when students and UGs do reviews, or any PGs that are doing research or teaching, it's important to get into across at the start of their studies that yes, it can be useful and you can use it if you want to, but make sure you're aware of the dangers surrounding it. It's not just free crutch, for example. So I think it's a really good first step in trying to gauge what the different attitudes around AI are across the different faculties, and opinions around AI are really good. So I think it's something that could be pushed further for UG especially, and then again for PG as well.
If you want to like discuss moving it on to PGR, I'd be very happy to open it up a bit as well. I do just want to ask as well, I wasn't very specific with this question, but does it sound actually good having a workshop instead of just like information that's just out there that people can read? Would that be beneficial? Yeah. And second of all, oh, my second question, never mind, ignore me. Yeah, I'll think of it later probably, but yeah.
Just a point about SAIL.
Please, because I thought I knew what SAIL was, and then it turned out I didn't, and it's all over the place.
So one of my housemates was one of the people who worked on SAIL. SAIL is specifically intended so that you can give it your academic research and stuff like that, and it will keep it safe. You will maintain ownership over it. It's not being sent off to the servers. being put in a big secret database and being used to train other AIs.
How many tokens do you have on sale? Do you know?
That is a question I would have to ask my developer friend.
Sweet. I think that's the one caveat of using Sail, is I don't think you can just use it endlessly. If it was using a workshop, you'd have to really craft what you're asking. I might be making this up, like, I love spreading misinformation, but like, don't get me wrong. But yeah, are there any more like suggestions or questions? Oh, I should probably say this is my email if you want to speak to me. Like leave.
I'm just concerned, obviously you're graduating.
Yes.
Is this something that you're going to pass on to a future education officer or future university faculty rep? How, obviously, because you're not being here, I don't think 6 weeks is long enough for this project.
Oh, 100%.
How do you plan on, passing it on to?
Whoever wants to take it on, to be honest. I'm very happy to kind of guide it a little bit. I don't want to just drop it. I'm very happy. I mean, I am employed, yippee, but I start my job in September. I'm very happy to kind of discuss this either over the summer, obviously that's not compulsory, with whoever wants to pick it up. Obviously, if Neve wants to pick it up. If anybody just wants to drop it, that's also fine. This is not like my baby. I'm happy for this to just kind of like go in the bin, to be honest. But if somebody wants to pick it up, I'd very happily kind of hand everything over.
Anyone else?
Just saying that I do definitely think that the workshop would be a great idea, because obviously, especially from students that have spoken to me, no one reads their emails, no one's going to read a document on the use of AI. Even if there's one that exists, it will just sit there. So I think definitely having a proactive approach is the right way forward.
Sweet, thanks.
You get 300,000 tokens a year with Sail, which has decreased from what it used to be.
Jesus Christ, okay. That's good to know.
It's quite a lot, but
Yeah.
also it's not a year's worth if
Yeah.
you're actually using it.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Woo. We're going to take a 10-minute break now anyway, because we've been going for an hour. So see you back here at 4:30.
Is it actually?
It's not today's
It's not bad, it's going to be fun. No, it's not very
essentially, yeah.
For me, if we're going to renew it, what's the point?
Yes, so first one carried out. I think we need to say that it's, you know, it is in some capacity, we don't have to take that call right now. Some clubs, but it would be an asynchronous. That review of the something like throwing out.
We have to.
Is that true? Oh, I thought you were talking like it started weekly. Oh, right.
Over the summer,
There'll be a week back. Opportunity in there.
I was doing interviews with great time about it as well.
Here's only something like, you know, that's what happens. And I think that's obviously the risk is that it has recognition.
Yeah, she was beaming, and I was just there, like, I was scared, like, I didn't know.
So where's that? Anyway, yeah, so that's a separate thing.
Oh my god.
Or they do like a, especially with like a monthly score. How much do your fees cost?
I literally had to read it by myself.
Leader, how much do your fees cost?
And I'm just
these
Yes, and then
you can also add more
I forgot you something of that. It was so good. It was so good. We can't look at that. Well, I think next year you should probably try and keep basketball at the end. Because I think that, yeah, because it always makes it such a big last. But it was so weird to hear this ended. No, you can. You're like, oh, we can. Oh my god, yeah. Just who's your next president?
Yeah. Oh, I was sending an email.
Oh, what are you doing? Oh my god, we've tried that as well with Juice. Is there anything that this place has done that we can do? There is something. There is something. I don't know how to sort it out. Really? That is that. Yeah. If she got Tina involved, no, genuinely, if she got Tina involved, that kid.
You have to email the
Why did she draw?
I would
This is only reported though. We don't get sued for defamation. No, that's not. It's not I was always running like that. That, to be fair, I can't even lie, that makes sense. That actually makes sense. That's fab, yeah. It goes with our I was waiting at house the other day. I was in there. Sorry, just called them to be in and right, like, it was like when Kate was, I mean, I was like, oh my god, there was oh really? Oh, I didn't accept it anymore. All you do is just 85% is come round to your name. So I was over it, I was over it, I don't want to pretend, I don't want to stay with it. What am I chased out? It's not yet. I actually
Right. Let's go again. It's time for everyone's favourite social media policy is coming back to UA. Woo! That's what we're all here for. Chris, would you like the mic or would you like Rory to have it? Would you like it? Here you go. Right, everyone listen to Chris, because he's got something to say.
I suppose like similar to last time, I just want to take a moment to give a little bit of kind of context, kind of setting with it, and also just frame a little bit about some of the feedback from last time and how we've kind of worked and responded to that. But I suppose kind of fundamentally at the core of this, the policy is about how social media is kind of used responsibly across the organisation. And also the fact that as a registered charity that does matter in the context of what we do and how we work. So spoke about it kind of previously, but there are kind of quite specific legal duties that are placed around the student union as a charity, in particular with regards to things around safeguarding, data protection, but also making sure that everything that's done in the name of the charity, which also includes by kind of connection, our umbrella kind of student groups, is lawful and doesn't put people at risk. So that's very much kind of the framing around why we have a policy and why we need to have a policy. But also, there's very clear expectations that are kind of set by the Charity Commission as the regulator. And that sets out really how kind of student unions, charities, more specifically, need to manage things like risk, reputation, public communications, which is obviously what this kind of sits within. So part of this policy is also about making sure that the expectations are kind of clear and set out in a practical way, both to a regulator perspective, but also in terms of an audience who's got to work within the parameters of it. Also, I suppose by way of some historical kind of context as well. There have been situations in the activity in kind of certainly recent years, but where we know where activity that's been undertaken by what are affiliated student groups and using accounts, even where it's been done with the best intentions, has created confusion about whether that constitutes as being official union activity or not. And that's one of the things we try to kind of address and clarify a bit with this kind of policy. But also those kind of situations do expose the union as a charity to regulatory risks as well. So part of the policy is closing that gap, but making sure that there's clarity about what is being done in the charity's name. So I think it's also really helpful for me, I suppose, to clarify as well about what policy isn't about as well. So it's not about stopping people from speaking freely. Individuals absolutely can criticise the union, the university, campaign on issues. Absolutely, that sits within the parameters of what we're here to do, and none of that has been taken away. It's also not about monitoring people's accounts or trying to control what people do online. That's not the intention. It's more about how this will be applied in kind of practice. And it's what it is about is making sure that there is a clear link to the union or affiliated groups. We've got kind of very sensible and proportionate actions that we can really take. The other thing I'd say is that by nature our approach is very much kind of a supportive approach first. So if something goes wrong, the starting point isn't about punitive action, it's about a conversation. So since the last meeting, we've taken on board obviously feedback from the meeting, ran some drop-in workshops, and I've been able to engage with kind of feedback from that. We'll see across the policy some stronger wording around freedom of expression, and in particular on party political activity with regards to the student union. There's also some new sections where it's clearer and emphasis on proportionality and the different roles in relation to the policy, and also additions around more explicitly setting out some stuff around safeguarding and what we have to do about keeping people kind of safe online. So ultimately, it's about getting kind of the balance right in terms of protecting the charity, student leaders, and also kind of student groups, and protecting other students as well, and making sure we're meeting our responsibilities. So today is really about hearing your views, whether that balance feels right in practice. I mentioned previously the policy sits with the trustee board, as kind of being the body that's responsible for kind of legal duties with regards to the charities, but one of the things that they're very committed to, and something that we've always emphasised throughout the process has been about that commitment to meaningful student consultation as part of it. So we generally want your feedback to shape how it works in practice, particularly for student groups. So the policy is kind of is there, and I'm happy to take what might be kind of specific questions from individuals as well. I can't obviously speak on behalf of trustees. That's later role to do on that one, but those trustees who are present can pick up on those answers. But what might be very practical questions you have, I'm happy to answer and address and obviously take on. feedback.
Anyone have any questions, comments for Chris on social media policy? Do we vote? So I'm just going to the first thing out. Rory, do you want to say anything?
There's not much more to say other than thank you for those who did provide feedback. We ran drop-ins last week. I think we had one attend the drop-ins, but we have had feedback through other means, through just general talking to people and through emails and messages too. So I think all of those have really helped in shaping this. And I hope those of you who have seen the first draft that came in February and compared it to the draft that is in front of us now, you do see a sort of marked difference and see that feedback has been sort of taken on board. Obviously from a trustee side, there are charitable obligations we have to comply with. And so largely this policy is an ability to turn around and say we are complying with the charitable obligations. Our affiliated student groups are part of the charity and fall under the same charitable obligations that kind of the company you're used to has to. And kind of on a kind of there's a word here. There's an element of, yes, it is kind of writing down a bit more regulation as to kind of what student groups can do. That is an element that students can consider when deciding to affiliate their student groups, basically. We get all the pros of, public liability insurance, security, and kind of that platform to advertise yourself and financial security through being an affiliated group, but it does come with a bit of regulation. I can quote Spider-Man if you want. Power and responsibility, anyway. But in actual practice, as I think Chris said, broadly, this will change very little about people's day-to-day lives and usage of social media. It's an ability for us to be able to turn around to the Charity Commission, to the university, to various different bodies and say, look, we have a policy, this is a procedure that we can follow, but realistically, you won't encounter any of it in day-to-day life if you're using it as you typically do.
I think it's by nature a policy that has to be a little bit more dynamic. Those of you who know, you'll see like the one prior to that was about 12 years old and made reference to things like Bebo and stuff, and that would mean nothing to maybe most people within the room for some of my generation. Still, even then, it doesn't. But by nature, this is more kind of fluid. It has to be kind of adapted. The pace at which this is changing is very kind of rapid as well, and it is probably the biggest area in terms of from a charity commission to regulator, where they're looking at in terms of risk for organisations as well.
Would you like a vote on this, Chris?
I mean, the formal approval sits with the board. It is helpful to I suppose, to know, to be able to go if there's an indicative vote from Assembly as part of it.
Yay, voting time! Okay, the two people at the back don't vote or I'll be really sad. Okay, all those in favour of approving this social media policy that was presented here today, raise your hand now.
Nice and high.
Nice and high for Frank, so you can count. And anyone for abstaining? And anyone against?
Two for abstaining, Frank.
Oh, one hand. Okay. There you go.
Yeah, I was against that. Any against? Yay, done, cool. Thank you, Chris.
Now it's time for Rory, lapsed policies for review.
I get all the fun ones. So, in case people aren't aware, policies that get sort of voted through UA have a 3-year lifespan, and then after 3 years they come back to UA, and we can have that discussion about whether we renew the policy for another 3 years, whether we throw that policy out because we think it's outdated, or whether we can send an officer away or a group away to look at the policy and review it and bring it back in a kind of a more modernised sense. For those of you who want a bit more of a history lesson, this Union Assembly in this format has only really existed for about 3 years, and so this is the first round of these policies coming back to be discussed like this, which is why there's 5 of them. We have the external religious advertisement policy, the accessibility policy, the pronoun policy, the safe space policy, and the student number growth policy. There is another conversation perhaps to be had around when policies get passed through Union Assembly, do they get felt? Do you guys feel like that they are being enacted? I think these are probably good policies to have that discussion about, especially being sort of 3 years old. Do we feel like they're still being fulfilled? And if not, there's a question as to why. Is that a question of the policy itself, or is that more of an institutional question about sort of our governance and our ability to see these sorts of things through and be held accountable to them? Because ultimately, Union Assembly passed these policies. Union Assembly has very much the right to come and sort of tell us you're not doing that policy that was passed. And kind of course correct us. So I'm happy to have a bit of a discussion on that to begin with if we want, or we can go straight into diving into each of the policies one by one and deciding one of those 3 options, renew, reject, or review, I believe, the 3 R's. So do you want a discussion on policies and if we feel like we're any good at actually seeing them through, or just go straight through them?
So, our apologies, this is a really minor point. Yes, I am dragging you into the mix, Henry. The pair of us have kind of looked through a lot of them, and for a lot of the Liberation Campaign groups, it'll still say something like forum or students with disability, forum LCO, stuff like that. I think we may need to go through the document and update all of the names.
Okay, definitely a good review element.
In the safe space one, it talks about that the union will make them not exposed to discrimination, criticism, harassment, or other emotional or physical harm. I think this needs to be reviewed in the light of obviously the resignations of Karis and Millie, and the other kind of overall thoughts and feelings towards the SU and the kind of atmosphere that's created. It would be good to review that one in its effectiveness.
Yes, I think so. That's a good point. It feels like we're going into sort of reviewing each one individually, which I'm more than happy to do. Sarah, is this a point on a specific policy? No, okay, let's go to that.
Yeah, my first thought is that maybe waiting 3 years is too long to review a policy and its effectiveness, that maybe there should be, like, in the idea of like holding accountable, maybe there should be like a 1.5 years or a year like reflection on a policy, to ensure that the officers are being held accountable, because obviously 3 years is like quite a long time in terms of turnover. And my other thought is about like having, often like policies are passed and they sort of have things that need to be enacted, but it doesn't say who's going to do them. So if it, maybe having like, I don't know what it would be, but having for each policy someone who's in charge of ensuring its implementation, that should be included in each policy, I think, so that firstly, that there's someone actually doing the things that the union is saying they're going to do, and also so that it's clear who you need to go to if you have a problem with that policy not being implemented.
Yes, I mean, I totally agree in terms of sort of a more frequent or earlier in kind of review of the kind of, certainly sort of within a year of it being passed, definitely the ability to come back and ask how it's going, I think is a really good touch point. And we can, I'm thinking in terms of rewriting governance, it probably makes sense to keep the 3-year overall review, but have that kind of, it comes back in a year to remind everyone what we have and what we're doing on it. In terms of assigning it to someone, again, a good point, and I wonder if, because we don't really have a policy template, we don't have a template that we give people when they're writing these to bring to Union Assembly. You'll see, even just flicking through all these, they're all different sort of shapes, sizes, fonts, all that. And just part of that can be assigning it to someone. But yeah, I think that's a very good point in terms of actually just accountability, because then there's a very clear, right, so-and-so is going to take that away and do something about it. I think that I've also got some thoughts on we get campaigns through, so you'll know full well about plant-based universities and fossil-free careers and stuff. I would like to establish a process with the university about those policies, to be able to say, this has come through our democratic process, here you go, please can you let us know what you can and can't do about that. And it gives us a really good sort of starting point as to how that runs as a campaign from our perspective. Because currently we get those sort of through, and there's a bit of like a discussion about, right, who's gonna do that, and it kind of ends up with just LUSU backs it, but PBU is going to continue sort of doing what they were doing, and then things drop off, which I'm sure is felt quite a lot by those campaign teams. You had your hand back up for a moment.
Yeah, just in response to your idea of a template, I think that's a really good idea, and I think it should be developed as like a guide to how to pass a Union Assembly policy, and it's always hard to reach like the wider student body, but making other students aware that they can't bring a motion, but they can find someone who can bring the motion on their behalf. Yeah, I mean, most students don't even know what Union Assembly is and how a policy works, but yeah, it would be good if other students were like bringing, like we had the tennis proposal last time. So just make it a lot easier for students to be able to engage with Union Assembly through bringing motions.
Yeah, I think it'd be good to make it clear.
With a consensus from the room, go to policy for policy. Oh no, he's got hands up. Sorry.
I also think that's a really good point from Sam, especially with the LUSU AGM upcoming, and making sure that people and students know how to take things. Obviously it's a bit of a different process, but still having a format would be really, really useful if that could happen preemptively for the LUSU AGM.
Yes, I mean, Frank knows more about this. The AGM has a template, doesn't it? Or there's a form, which is in the format of a template in terms of the union believes, the union resolves, things like that, isn't it?
3 text boxes.
Yes. Yeah. But I think that's a good point. And it would just be good to have a standardised, even just for them to all look roughly the same. So when we're looking at them, you have a kind of clearer image to go through them so that you understand what you're looking at each time. Yes?
Would you like to go policy by policy to vote?
Yes, I think let's go policy by policy. So we're going to start on the external religious advertisement policy. Yes, because each one needs to be decided upon. So this one, after a brief discussion I had earlier, seemed to come out from a very specific situation that was happening 3 years ago in terms of religious groups coming to Freshers' Fair and stuff. I'm not sure if people had a chance to read the policy, but our 3 options are to renew the policy as it is, to reject the policy and not have it back, or to allocate it to an officer to take away and look at and bring it back to the next the next UA, which is the AGM, is it, Frank, or it would come back another time?
It's up to you guys.
Okay. And yeah, and get reviewed in that sense. Any discussion on that first, or we can just go straight to voting?
I know from having a flick through the policy, the main sort of points were about ensuring no religious group is left out or no one feels marginalised.
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily see how that would be the case if, a society reshared a post from an external religious group, say if a church in Lancaster was having an event and they reposted that, would that technically be prohibited against the policy, and is that really needed?
It's quite hard for me to talk on it, to be honest, because it wasn't one that I was involved in the discussion. I'm looking more at the historians in the room. Chris, how does this actually fall in terms of, let's say, the social media policy that we've just sort of passed? Because there's obviously kind of limits to what we can do as a students' union in terms of party political endorsements. Presumably religious endorsements don't fall under our charitable.
We're more restricted by very specifically about political activity, so where you've got groups who are affiliated, there is still a thing around a freedom of association for groups and individuals and who they work and interact with us as part of it. I think for the context of this policy when it came up previously, it was very much looked at in terms of the framing of what was the freshers fair, welcome fair that we used to, that we still host. But that was very much kind of the context that was kind of initially looked at and drafted at the time.
I'm a bit confused by this policy because is it saying that like the SU can't reshare a post from one of the like faith societies?
I think it protects the faith societies in terms of what the SU can sort of share and affiliate and talk about. So I think that's fine. I think it's external religious advertisement. So external groups coming in. So it would be like having at Freshers Fair just one religious group advertising themselves at Freshers Fair, and kind of that feeling of exclusiveness, I think, was what I was trying to protect against when it came in. So that explaining question.
Yeah, I've just seen at the end that it does not include any about I missed that. Yeah, I didn't.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Any other comments on this one?
I think for this one, there's a potential that this is one policy that we have felt in our day-to-day life, in the fact that it doesn't feel like we've had a problem with it since, if it was felt to be a problem 3 years ago. And that question of if we cease to have it as a policy, will it become a problem again? But also, do we have kind of an appetite to find out, is the other way to phrase that. If I would voice my opinion on this policy, I don't necessarily see a need for it at the moment, but it could also very well just be taken away and reviewed and brought back in a more generic light, rather than feeling like it's very specific to a situation that was happening at the time.
Okay, so you've got three options. You've got review it from someone, you've got get rid of it, or just renew it as it is currently in the format you just read. So we'll go, who thinks we should just renew it as it is? Put your hands up. You've got two behind you as well. Right, who thinks that it should be reviewed and then come back to UA at some point? And who thinks we should bin it off / get rid of it?
Lovely. That's the first one. Thank you, Karis.
Great. 1 5.
the next one is the accessibility policy, which let me just remind myself of the content of this one. The union will always work to make the union as accessible as possible. And further points. Okay. Any discussion on this one particularly?
Yeah, thank you. This is the one we have the main gripe with. It says forums like 3 or 4 times. It says Student with Disabilities Officer. None of those exist anymore. Of the now 6 LCOs we've got, one of them is called a forum, 2 are committees, 2 are communities, 1's a network. So I just think I'd really like to see this one reviewed. I'm happy to go and do it, but just update the terminology so it's still accurate. And aside, I think that makes a really compelling case for this to be done annually instead, because 2 societies or 2 LCO groups changed their name in this year alone, and now we've just got a third created. So I think this really does need an annual review.
Yes, yeah. I think that there's a way of future-proofing it as well, probably in terms of not naming names and naming role titles in a certain way so that it can kind of withstand that kind of turbulence.
Any other thoughts, comments, feelings?
Yeah, has this been taken to accessibility? No, because in terms of the recommendations, I know that Lizzie did a whole workshop for societies, so they definitely have the best sort of ideas on what the union can do to be accessible.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think it should be taken to someone from the accessibility community.
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah, I think it was born from the access community back in 2023, but that doesn't mean it shouldn't be looked at again by the same community.
Anything else?
I've noticed in the events section it says that a British Sign Language interpreter will be available upon request. How much notice would be needed for that? I know it's obviously a reasonable adjustment, so would it be sort of on the day someone could say, is there an interpreter in Lusu full time, or could we send someone on a course sort of thing?
This is one where perhaps the policy, we haven't felt it being enacted so well since when it was first brought to us. I think a procedure of how you would request a sign language interpreter or any other sort of access requirements could be more publicised for events such as election results nights and stuff. That could be made a lot clearer, and it will help us as well in terms of going back to kind of an instruction manual each time to kind of say, that's what we need to do each time we do something like this. But yeah, that can definitely, I think, it's a good point.
I think with this policy, it's definitely one that needs work, or maybe it just needs more kind of outreach. I've sat on a society exec for the past couple of years. I've never seen this document, and I think all societies and sports clubs should have seen it. Obviously, we've had great training from Emily around things like this, but I think this policy just sets it out so clear, and having this, during that handover where, we get sent loads of documentation, that this should definitely be included in that.
Yeah, I think that raises the kind of big point that I said at the start in terms of how good are we at actually enacting policies that get passed at UA, and yeah, that's an excellent sort of point in terms of we have this policy, but once it's been passed, does it just sit on the shelf, or is it actually shared around with people, and how do we go about fixing that problem that we have?
Anything else for a vote?
Cool. Right, time to vote again. Okay, if you think we should just straight renew this policy, put your hand up high so Frank can see it. Okay, if you think this policy should be renewed, maybe by Accessibility Committee, or just reviewed in general, put your hand up now, right, nice and high, so that Frank can see it. And if you think we should ditch this policy altogether, put your hand up now. Cool.
Is that action for accessibility?
Well, I don't want to put it on them if they don't want it. Yes. Yay. Cool.
Lovely.
Third one.
Thank you. Third one is the pronoun policy. So this one resolves that the union will actively work to normalise clarifying pronouns, pronoun use by including pronouns in introductions and meetings, and work to encourage all members to familiarise themselves with the concept of gender pronouns and their significance in society. Opening the floor for discussion around the paper.
So while I'm in proxy for Sivan, I should probably discuss the point Sivan said. Sivan did intend to review this a while back. I can't remember if they actually made any progress on this. I do also have to make the point of who introduced themselves using their pronouns today? Yeah.
Yeah.
So this one is probably, let's review this and let's get LGBTQ plus involved.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think, personally, I think it's an important policy to keep. But again, we're not enacting it, and why is that? And let's try and fix that.
I definitely agree. I think it seems one of those policies that's sort of been agreed to and then just forgotten about. I know, obviously, in email, at the end of each email sign-off, all the staff, I think, have their pronouns on there, but again, it doesn't seem really used, so definitely reviewing it.
Yeah, just essentially what the people have also said. I think definitely amongst older people, there's just no culture of even having the concept of either identifying by your pronoun or asking someone. And a lot of the PhD students are a little bit older. I think it would take a little bit of education on this just to explain to people it's good manners to say, my name's David, I'm he, him, etc. Literally just to explain that that is a thing and explain why you do it, is that some people have different pronouns. Yeah.
Anybody else? Oh, overtime.
Okay. You know the drill. If you think we should renew this policy as it is, straight away, put your hand up now, nice and high, so that Frank can see it. If you think we should review this policy, possibly with accessibility community, all that jazz, put your hand up now, nice and high, so that Frank can see it. And if you think we should get rid of this policy, bin it off, put your hand up. Woo. Okay, policy number 4, Rory.
Our safe space policy. So the union will ensure the students' union offices are a safe space which we define as a place or environment in which a person or category of people can feel confident that they will not be exposed to discrimination, criticism, harassment, or any other emotional or physical harm. Neve's already made her point on this, but I will welcome further points if people have them.
Thank you. As part of 5.5.1, it talks about not sharing personal information or experiences. What happens if there's a safeguarding concern and that has to be escalated and, in effect, breach the policy?
I believe that can be fixed with review. I think safeguarding concerns typically, although my expertise on safeguarding falls more through the scouts in fact, so that very much is a kind of, you can tell me this, I can't keep it a secret, however, I will have to tell someone and escalate it. And that, I think that could very much be kind of implemented into this policy to ensure that safeguarding responsibilities can be upheld through this, but kind of still by protecting people's personal information experience as much as we can.
Anybody else?
I admit that I haven't read the whole policy, and I'm not sure if it does come under safe space policy, but sort of like complaints procedure in LUSU isn't very clear, and from like discussions I've had, people don't feel like there's any like result or outcome from reporting something to LUSU. So yeah, it feels like it sort of should come under this, and a review of that I definitely think is necessary.
Thank you. Our complaints procedure has just gone through trustee board. As it's been reviewed, it's been clarified a fair bit. It's not on the website yet. I don't think it's not been updated.
So it's gone to our trustee board, governance subcommittee, so we'll go to trustee board for final approval. So we have to have a complaint policy system as the charity. But we've done quite a bit of work on it because at the moment we have things like code of conduct and complaints procedure. It's actually we created a clearer distinction between actually what those different policies are in place. So our complaints policy, we removed stuff in terms of disciplinary policy, and the code of conduct is much more set around kind of principles and values that students were to adhere to, and more specifically like groups and individuals, and that's the thing which we're kind of hanging stuff on more. But it's very much been reworked in with the mindset of actually there needs to be more clarity within terms of kind of process, managing it on time frames as well as individuals, but also there's a real wide range of stuff where things can become like a formal complaint, but actually we get lots of different things where many things can come in as feedback, but actually still complain about something, how that intersects with student groups. So that's the largest volume of complaints that come in is in relation to or alleged conduct with regards to a student or individuals within a student group. So yeah, it's been something that we've been very aware and been mindful of as part of that. It's still to go to board as final approval, but we've worked with a number of different kind of parties as part of it. But it's also for a large part of informed in like good practice that's happening in places like Bristol. They've had to take a lot of work in relation to it. So yeah, it's something that's very much a live thing. We only met on it about 2 days ago.
Yeah, Thursday, I think. It's still useful feedback, though, in terms of how people are feeling about the current complaints process. I think it's worth saying that is heard, and I hope it's, the more feedback we get, the more we can kind of try and fix problems that we see arising, because obviously we don't want people feeling like that they're not being dealt with properly through our processes. But thank you.
Any other comments, thoughts? Do you want a resolution, or who's going to review it, or just a review?
If it's not allocated to a person, it kind of falls to me, so I'll review it if no one else does. But I think this is one that, I think LGBTQ want to have a look as well. So.
Okay, you guys know the drill. If you think we should...
If you think we should renew this policy as it is, put your hand up now. If you think we should review this policy, possibly by LUSU and the LGBTQ+ community, put your hand up high so Frank can count. And if you think we should ditch this policy altogether, get rid of it, put your hand up now. Cool, right, stay with me. Last one.
Thank you for your patience. This is not the most exciting section of UA, I appreciate. So this last one is the student number growth policy. I think this is, it's an incredibly interesting policy actually. That the union resolves that it will engage with the university during recruitment periods to review their projected growth alongside bed spaces and student service resourcing, etc. Any thoughts, any feelings on this paper before we go to a vote? Fear everyone's figured out the cheat code to this section.
Time for a vote. Is there anything to say? Okay, if you think we should renew this policy exactly how it is, put put your hand up now, nice and high, so that Frank can see it. Okay, I'm counting no one. Okay, if you think that we should review this policy, put your hand up now, nice and high, so Frank can see it. And if you think we should ditch this, bin this off, not have any more, put your hand up now, nice and high, so that Frank can see it.
Would anyone like to help me review this policy? Or otherwise, I'll take it on myself.
Anyone want to hang out with Rory? No?
It's got EDI considerations and we can do it as well.
Oh, so you've got 3 friends to do it with you.
Wow. That's more friends than I thought I had in this room. This is really nice. I think that's, yep. Thank you very much, everyone. You will see more of these in future union assemblies, I'm afraid. Now we are over 3 years old as a as a group.
Cool.
I can only apologise going forwards.
Last official item for information, Kate Bragg. Do you have anything you want to say, or you think the people can read it?
You can read it. We've not changed a lot. We've added new positions, eliminated the vice president role, and added 3 new vice presidents to adhere to different needs of the JCR. And I have eliminated the exec disciplinary procedure and replaced it with something more friendly and accommodating to a volunteer role.
Anyone got any thoughts, comments?
To confirm, this went through all the due process of changing bylaws within Lonsdale College, and Lonsdale College approved of this message.
It did indeed. We had an AGM, there was free food. People showed up.
That.
Cool. All good? Amazing. Now it's time for any other business. Who has any other business that they want to bring to UA before we can all get out of here? Get in. Oh, no. I'm joking.
This is like a really quick one. I don't know if we should mention this, but there's like academic rep, what's it called, like awards coming up. You can vote for people if you know any academic reps that have helped you. It's until like the 22nd of May, I think. I don't know where you can find how to do that, but I'm sure if you wanted to, then you can. Thanks.
Yes, it's super quick. Just a meeting with Karina, who is she's kind of head of all faculties for PGR in some capacity. But there's no rep for the medical school at PGR. If you happen to know any PhD students in the medical school, if you're friends with them, if you're dating them, if you live with them in any way, shape or form, it would be really nice to have a PGR rep in the medical school, because there should be one for each school. Watch faculty. That's it.
Emily wanted me to say that this is a lot of people's last UA because the next one is an AGM. So thank you all for sitting through this every month, for listening to chairing, all that jazz. And we will see you all at the AGM. Bye everyone!